Good evening, everyone. Have we started the class? Has the class started? Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Very good evening to all of you. This is Ashutosh at 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐞 at Physicswala. Welcome to the platform. Today's discussion would be around engineering ethics. Obviously, most of you who are preparing for engineering services must be aware that engineering ethics is a very important part of your prelims examination. Most of you understand the domain of ethics. Obviously, all of you know what ethics means, right? I hope most of you are aware of what is ethics. So let's start by asking you, do you know exactly how we define ethics? You make decisions in your life every day. All these decisions are ethical. So do you actually evaluate your decisions every day? Now that is the biggest question. Why do we need to evaluate our decisions every day? Government keeps doing a lot of things, right? You have a lot of potholes, you have a lot of dusty roads, you have traffic jam, you have a lot of other things happening around you. Crime, violence. Are we going to make people responsible for these actions? Or should we just wait for things to happen on their own? Now that is the question most of you will ask. When something fails, right, people start raising questions. So from your exam point of view, you have to define the domain of the study. Now, as your exam is approaching, it is very near, and your prelims exam obviously requires a very detailed understanding, conceptual understanding, right? All of you can ask questions if you want in between. I may try to answer. So if you are preparing for this prelims, right, obviously you need to know the key strategy. The most important aspect is that whether you have studied the complete text regarding ethics, whether you have understood the principles and the knowledge regarding what ethics is, because if you are preparing for engineering services or in general for UPSC, obviously you might have some reference book or some reference content with you, right, which you might be using. Today we'll try to reduce your burden, we'll try to reduce your effort and try to streamline it with something more unique. As you know, 10 to 12 questions are asked in the exam. Normally 8 to 15 questions are there. These questions are centered around certain key themes, certain key ideas. These key themes and ideas are necessary to understand how you are going to deal with the question. Questions may not be straightforward, right? Some of them are easy, no doubt. Some of them are definitely more nuanced. If you understand the word nuanced, it means undercurrent, right? What is visible is not there. Something which is hidden, something which is beneath. Fine. So let's start with a very brief understanding today of the domain of engineering ethics and how you should go about preparing for it and probably attempting your exam, which is due in 1.5 months, I think. So kindly take note of these strategies. All those who have prepared, all those who are preparing, those who are revising, definitely may benefit from this session. Let us try to understand, right? Let us try to understand certain key terms which are visible in the exam. Now, if you do your PYQ 2023-24 analysis, right, you will find exactly 10 questions were asked. These 10 questions, right, these 10 questions were centered around certain important topics. What these topics are, like one of the important topic that was there. Now, first thing, that how much time you should give to this portion. Obviously, as you know, it is almost 10% of the exam. So I would not say that devote a lot of time, but yes, definitely focus on some key areas. If you focus on key areas, you are definitely going to perform better. Right. One of the important areas which are frequently or which is frequently asked in the examination, that area is ethical theories and principles. Now, as you know, every day, right? Every day you interact with society, you interact with people around you, you interact with friends, family, and a lot of people, right? A lot of other things you experience every day, right? How do you try to understand these experiences? Do you try to fit these experiences into some meaningful conclusions? Right? Now, why I'm telling you this, because if you are able to understand that what are you experiencing around you and how you are going to develop that into a principle, into a conclusion, if you have an ability to bring that into a conclusion, right? For example, you had let's say a normal fight with someone, right? Now you draw an experience from that, develop that into conclusion. Now your ethics portion in engineering services is more about your experiences, some things which are factual and theoretical, and many things which you experience around you, right? Let's come, I'll give you an example for that. Let's say ethical theories. This is a very important part, right, which directly or indirectly will be asked. Now, in ethical theories and principles, right, what is most important thing is to know some of the scholars and their ideas. When you are dealing with engineering ethics, or when you are dealing with engineering profession, right, I'm using the word profession. I hope most of you know what is the word profession mean. The word profession, right, signifies certain kinds of features. When you are in a profession, you have a particular skill, right? You have an expertise, right? You have not only skill and expertise, but you have a responsibility. You have moral responsibility. You have legal responsibility, right? Imagine an engineer giving wrong advice to make a dam or a bridge, right? He has a legal responsibility. He has a professional responsibility because he's the only one who can perform this function. Nobody else can do that. So he virtually controls the decision, and the consequences of the decision will be on him. Now, many of these theories, right, help you understand, right, that what exactly is the responsibility, what exactly is the nature of responsibility, or what exactly is the nature of answerability of a person for his decision. When people make decisions, they are answerable. They have to make decisions on understanding the consequences, right? So one very important aspect is ethical theories and principles, because you are a professional. A professional has these obligations. Fine. So you have expertise, you have responsibilities, you have moral, legal responsibility. Now, if we use the word moral responsibility, legal responsibility is your expertise, right? It is your responsibility which has been given to you by the organization, government or private, wherever you're working, in any sector you're working, the organization has given you a responsibility. And because of that, you are enjoying certain authority and power. That is your legal responsibility. What law says, what system says, what procedure says, what rules say, legal responsibility. Moral responsibility is beyond this legal. Moral responsibility emerges not just from the fact that you are part of a system or you are part of an organization or you are occupying a position. It also emerges from the fact that your actions have consequences for human beings, for their safety, right, for their security, and for so many other consequences, right, which may damage the lives of people, which may impact the lives of people. So your actions have consequences, right, which are beyond just what law wants you to do. Now, this is moral responsibility. So many theories are there which deal with this aspect, that how are we going to understand our responsibilities, right? So let us say there is, I'll just give you a few things, few important, right? What you can say, pointers which you can use for your preparation, right? If you're preparing, you can use them. If you're revising, definitely you can use them, right? For example, we use utilitarian principle. Now, utilitarian principle says maximum good for maximum number. If we are doing anything, if our decisions are taken, if an action is taken, if it maximizes the good of maximum number. For example, you have to make a road, you have to make a bridge, right? You have to make anything, you have to do anything, for example, right? Make a policy, make a scheme. You have to implement something, you have to spend money, right? What and how are you going to evaluate what is good, what is right choice, what is wrong choice? So when your action is going to maximize the benefit for maximum number, so rather than making the bridge here, if I make the bridge somewhere else which connects a rural village with the urban area, or which connects a rural village with the main road, right? Now that is maximizing the benefit. So how many people, to what extent can benefit from something that I'm doing is utilitarian. So utilitarian says maximize the benefit for maximum people. If you are doing that, then your action is ethical. So an engineer is making a gadget. An engineer is making a product. That product can be used, consumed by a lot of people, utilitarian. That product can be consumed only by elites and rich, not utilitarian. Fine. From this principle, it is not ethical. Fine. Right. Then you have a theory of justice. Now, utilitarian talks about, let's take very interesting example. Now you are there, you are studying in your room, right? And you order a pizza. Fine. You are hungry, you order a pizza. And the moment the pizza comes, the moment you are about to receive the pizza, right, two or three of your friends come, right? Probably they were waiting outside for the pizza to enter. So they come, right? And now the moment they enter, right, you are about to eat your pizza, now three of them are staring at you. Fine. They are staring at you with a very needy eyes. Fine. Or whatever the hunger that you can see. So obviously you offer them. Right. Now let's say the pizza had 4 pieces. Now there are 4 friends. What is the maximum benefit that can happen? 4 by 4. Maximum benefit, right? Everybody somewhere gets equal benefit. Now, one of the friends or two of your friends are, let us say, they are well behaved, they are well mannered, they have etiquette, and they say, no, no, we just had, they're honest. They just say that we just had a food, right? We don't want to eat. Now, what do? You have only one friend left whom you have to share. Now you can divide it, right? Half and half. That is 2 pieces to you, 2 pieces to you. Now, see, now the idea is the maximum has increased. See, the quantity has increased. And why maximum people? Because 2 people needed and 2 people got. The others did not need. Or let's say the others said, we have eaten, we don't want that much, we want less. So you could have divided the pieces in such a manner that you eat more, the others will eat less. Because, not because you want to give them less, but because they need less. Fine. This kind of distribution is called equity. Now, in your 23-24 exam, right, certain questions have been asked in such manner. Case studies have been asked in a manner, right, where you have to use this principle. I'm just giving you an example why it is important. Fine. Equity. Equity is what? Distributing or dividing the resource or making a decision in such a manner that opportunity, resources, benefits are distributed in a manner where the more who needs more gets more, who needs less gets less. Now that is more fair. That is logical. See, that is justice given by Rawls, John Rawls. Right. Same. If we look at, let me write it here, Gandhian principle. Now, Gandhian principle of Sarvodaya. Now, when engineers are making policies or when engineers are making planning, right, when they are doing economic planning, they are making schemes or they are implementing schemes, they are constructing infrastructure, making infrastructure, operating railways, and many other industries. See, what is the ultimate purpose of any economic growth and development? The ultimate purpose of economic growth and development is the benefit of all. See, almost similar. But it says maximum number, not everyone. There's a difference. Maximum number can be 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 6 out of 10, right? Depending upon the kind of resource we have. So if we want to benefit the maximum number, right, we may not benefit everyone, because we'll be happy, we'll be relieved if we benefit the maximum number. What about the minimum which is left? Now see, the Gandhian philosophy comes here, which talks about Sarvodaya or Antodaya. Now Antodaya or Sarvodaya means rise of all. Antodaya means the benefit to the poorest, the most vulnerable in the society. The person who is sitting in the end, standing last in the line, he will be benefited. Antodaya, Uday of the Ant, the last one. Sarvodaya, the rise of all. Now see, there are Gandhian principles, right, which obviously I said not directly, but indirectly they may be asked, right? Then so kindly keep this in mind. This part is quite important. There are 4-5 important scholars and theorists whom you can use, right? Not directly, maybe in implied manner. Professional responsibility. Now questions come on certain topic called professional responsibility. For example, right, as an engineer working with the government of India, or as an engineer working in a particular department, rural development, irrigation, agriculture, right? Any ministry, for example, railways, what is your professional responsibility, right? Concept. Now, an important theory or concept is applied here, right? You'll see a lot of questions on this topic. That is called the concept of duty ethics. Concept of duty ethics. Now, see, what is the duty of a watchman? What is the duty of a security guard? What is the duty of an operator, a supervisor, right? A driver? What is the duty? They have a duty, right? That is, they have an obligation to perform. The concept is called duty ethics, right? In ethics, we use a term, you might be familiar, those who have studied, right? Those who not, obviously they can study in the class. Deontology. We'll start with the series, right? On YouTube as series of lectures. Obviously, you can access that also if you want. Deontology, deon, word, right? Deon means duty. That is the idea. So deontology or deontological ethics talks about concept of duty. There is no if and but, there is no excuse, right, related to duty. If you have to perform your duty, you have to perform your duty. Now you cannot think of consequences, you cannot make excuses, you cannot think of if this happens, then why this will happen, if this happens, should I do it or not? No, because your obligation is to perform your duty. And one of the prime contributor is Kant, Immanuel Kant. We also call this Kantian ethics. Now he's saying that it is obvious that there are some things which need to be done, irrespective of what is going to happen. See? Now, most of the time, the professional responsibility is related to two things. One, your action, other is consequence. What is the action? What is the consequence? Now, if you say, right, if I eat more, I'll become fat. So you eat less because you don't want to become fat. Fine. See, you are changing the action because you have kept consequence or the end as important. Fine. Same way, if you say that no, if I don't eat, fine, there are a lot of people who can eat, right? Obviously, if you eat less, the others can eat more, right? Now see, action and consequence, means and end. So there are many decisions that we take, right, which are based on the end, right? Something we want to happen, that is why we are doing something, or which is simply not based on the end or the consequence, but we do it because it is something ethical, because it is something right. You protect someone because you feel it is right, not for the glamour which you may get with that, right? You say something which is correct, not because there is a media coverage for you, but you do it because it is right. You raise a question, you criticize someone because somebody has done wrong, not for the consequences that will happen. So see, most of the actions or most of the professional responsibility questions which you see in the exam are based on two ideas. One, whether you have performed your duty, and while performing your duty, what have been the consequences, right? So whether you have done your duty without viewing the consequence, or you have not done your duty because you felt some consequence will happen. Now see, two kinds of questions may come, especially if you talk about your case studies. Fine. So professional duty talks about many things. You have to make sure that your actions lead to correct consequences. If consequences are not correct, but action has to be taken because it is your duty, it is your responsibility, right? Then if you make that decision, irrespective of what happens, right? For example, encounter, you kill someone because he's a criminal, right? Now, what you did is wrong. But why you did something was because it was your duty. See, that is the idea. So professional ethics, professional responsibility deals with these ideas. Many questions can be asked in this context, right? Your exams more or less see these kind of questions regularly. Fine. Then questions related to, right, issues while you are performing your work. Questions related to people in authority. Obviously, when you are in government or in any organization, you have authority. Authority can lead to misuse of authority. Fine. For example, if you are in the panel where, or if you are taking the, you are in the interview panel, right, where one of your relative is also appearing for the interview. So it is obvious that your personal or your interest, family interest, or personal interest, or interest of your kith and kin, right, is in conflict with whom? Is in conflict with, right, kith and kin is in conflict with your official duty. So most of the time when personal interest collides with official interest, when personal duty is in conflict with, or personal interest is in conflict with the official interest, right, we see conflict of interest, right? A judge listening the case of his own son, or a judge sitting in a bench, right, where some of his relative is due to appear. Fine. And likewise. So we see regularly the questions on conflict of interest. Kindly keep this in mind. The questions can be designed as, if this is the situation, what does it amount to? Right? Do you think this situation is a situation of conflict of interest? How to deal with conflict of interest, right? So obviously to deal with conflict of interest, you need more transparency, right? You need more accountability, you need laws which regulate such activities, which restrict people from misusing their authority. Fine. So if you have understood this much, right, let's see, come to this part now. See, now based on 23-24 analysis, I am telling you this because this can give you a lot of edge in the exam that you are going to appear, right? Safety and risk. Every engineering profession, right, every profession obviously has some risks and hazards. Engineering has a lot of risks and hazards. As civil engineers, as mechanical engineers, right, as electrical engineers, you deal with a lot of things which involve safety and risk, right? Now, for example, to what extent is the responsibility of the engineer to make sure that the safety of the infrastructure or the use of the infrastructure is safe for people around him, or the commitment. There's a very famous Volkswagen case, right? Volkswagen emission case. So Volkswagen emission case is based on, that's a case study which is based on the emission norms, right, set by the Europe or European governments. So European governments have different emission norms, and obviously these vehicles have to pass the standard emission norms. Now the emission norms which are there in Europe and the emission norms which are there in India, right, they will vary. Or developing countries, let's say, they will vary. Now many of these vehicles, they are not able to pass the standard of emission, pollution norms, you can say, in their countries, but they are able to pass, obviously due to corruption and so many other things, they are able to pass these tests more easily in developing countries. Now, obviously, those people who are involved in this process, those people who have designed the engines, those people who don't fit or don't see it as fit to be operated, what they'll do? Either they will raise this question, they will protest against the decision, fine, or they will accept it. Now, see, always there will be a kind of bargain, there will be a kind of sacrifice. So, if you want to save your job, you agree with the company, fine. If you want to save people, you have to disagree with the company. Now, which of that you choose, that is up to you. See, so everywhere, right, whenever engineers are also dealing with certain kinds of problems, right, their safety is also at risk. Other safety is also at risk. In general, risk may happen everywhere. See? So, risk is not something unwanted, risk is not something unseen, risk is calculated. But if you have taken a decision and calculated the risk, have you calculated the risk to the extent, right, that it is transparent, honest, and it has been communicated to the organization and the people properly? Fine. For example, when you talk about food products, you talk about consumption of medicines, right? You talk about baby milk. You talk about so many things that we are doing today. They involve safety and risk. Fine. So one segment of the question normally you will find in the exam coming from this area. Fine. And here also obviously you have to make decisions. You have to choose options which somewhere maximize. We have just talked about a theory which maximize the benefit of all, right? Or which talks about the benefit of the most vulnerable, or somewhere it creates maximum benefit for maximum people, and likewise. See, so safety, risk, hazards, they are also part of this understanding. They are part of your ethical decision making. Disasters, disaster management, environmental, right? A lot of issues can come under this, which you can study. Fine. Like I said, see, this simply translates here sustainability and environmental ethics. Today we talk about environmental governance. Today we are, right? Most of you are aware of green technologies. Most of you are aware of, electric vehicles. Most of you are talking about batteries. Use of batteries, typical type of lithium batteries be replaced by some batteries. Now today there are a lot of issues. Sustainable development goal, I hope all of you have heard of this. Fine. How many of you try to apply this in your life? Do you switch off the lights? Do you use minimum use of water, right? Most of you might be, I'm not talking about everyone, right? But most of the engineers I've seen in the hostels, right? Minimum use of water, fine. But yeah, let's not get into that. So once a bath obviously saves a lot of water, right? One bath once a week, fine. So let's say SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. These Sustainable Development Goals want many of the objectives of the government to be achieved for welfare, development, public interest, and likewise in a sustainable manner. We are trying to reduce the carbon footprint. Fine. Now try to understand. While we are going for sustainable development, right, we are reducing industrialization. So if I want to increase conservation and green cover, forest cover bachana hai, conservation I have to increase, or for that matter, I have to, rehabilitate someone, Gujars, tribals. You see a lot of conflicts are there, right? We'll talk about in detail. This is not the exact class for those details. I'm giving you just today indication. So carbon footprint hai, right? Now let's say if you have to go for conservation, you have to reduce industrialization, right? Now can you agree? Do you agree, any of you? Do you agree that we should reduce the industrialization drastically so that we can increase the forest cover, so can become more sustainable, right? What will happen to creation of jobs? What will happen to employment, right? Already you know what is happening with the employment side. We are getting a lot of skill development in many areas today, fine. But most of the skill development are low skill development programs, right? So should we reduce it or should we go ahead with this? Now see, this is a challenge. This is a technically a dilemma. We call this as dilemma. We should go for growth or we should go for development, or we should go for conservation. We should go for industrial growth or we should go for sustainable development practices, right? Now see, this is a conflict. Every situation of conflict requires a decision. So your exam, you will find many questions, at least 2 questions on this idea, which are related to either information related to SDG, right? A part of that can also be learned through your current affairs, right, part. So dilemma, fine, or the dilemma of decision making, ethical dilemma. Right. So sustainability, environmental ethics is also a very important issue, right? Wildlife conservation, flora and fauna conservation. Obviously, we are not getting into that detail, but yes, to an extent, some information is needed from this portion, right? This is a very important topic, keeps coming every time, right? Any UPSC exam you write, you will find this topic is very frequent. Fine. Now, whistleblowing, because corruption is a big issue. Corruption is a big issue. Obviously, we are studying ethics. We are talking about engineering ethics. So, engineering ethics is ethics in the engineering sector. Corruption happens everywhere. Fine. You know, obviously, infrastructure, roads, tolls, highways, freeways, all these projects, bidding, tender process, there are a lot of ways by which corruption can happen. Fine. So, if corruption takes place in the government, right? If you remember, I don't know how many of you know, but one of the famous cases is the case of a National Highway Authority of India engineer, right, who was one of the first whistleblower. Whistleblower is one who highlights corruption in his organization or who highlights corruption against his own bosses. There are internal whistleblowers. Internal whistleblowers are part of the government or that department or organization, and there are external whistleblowers like media. So engineer that I think Rajendra Dubey, right? He was one of the Satyendra Dubey, sorry. So he was one of the first National Highway Authority of India engineer to raise a whistleblowing against the project that was being done. He was a brilliant engineer. He wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. The letter somewhere, right? Somewhere, I don't know how, that letter became known to the people against whom he was raising the complaint. He was killed. Right? And then another, right, engineer, and I am pass out, Manjunath, Indian Oil Corporation. He was highlighting the adulteration in petrol and diesel. He was killed. Right? Another, right? There are a lot of examples, I would say. So corruption is part of the government system. Corruption is part of, in fact, any system, you can understand. Now see, so if you have to deal with corruption, you make laws, you make procedures, right? But one of the important aspects is that there are honest people in the system, there are honest engineers, obviously, in the system who want to highlight the risks involved, who want to highlight a lot of malpractices, bad practices, quality, right, or non-qualitative products being used by the organizations or industries or their companies. They are misusing the authority. They want to highlight all this. How can they highlight it? Unless they are protected. So Whistleblowing Protection Act, a lot of countries in the world have provided protection to whistleblowers, right? India has also is one of them, though it is not totally operational, but Whistleblowing Protection Act 2011, right, technically implemented from 2013, and it is obvious that there are a lot of changes required to that law, but yes, we have a protection for whistleblowers. Questions come on this. They can definitely come on this, right, because this is a very important aspect which protects ethics in government or ethics in any system, right? If you protect those people who highlight corruption, definitely corruption will go down. Fine. Kindly look into this. You can read the provisions of the law. You can also talk about the features of the law that can be in the exam. Fine. Right. Then let's talk about 2-3 more topics very briefly, right? I'll not take much of your time. So let's say these topics, right? Intellectual property rights, right? Obviously, all of you know that for the world now, it is a world of creativity and innovation. We need to protect the rights of people, rights of people who contribute to some extraordinary resource, some extraordinary product or service for the people. So obviously, right, the intellectual property of the people, that is their uniqueness, their unique skill, their unique contribution needs to be protected. This is very important, right, for engineers, innovators, scientists, research and development in the sector of engineering, pharmaceutical, right, medicine. Many of these areas or sectors are there where one's unique knowledge needs to be protected, right? It has a lot of other implications. For example, when Western countries develop some product or service, or they develop a product which can be consumed by developing countries. So when they deliver, when they sell this product to us, let's say a medicine, an injection, right? You know, obviously for cancer treatment and for so many other treatments, right? Alzheimer's treatment, very costly medication is there. So when these medicines come to developing countries, their prices increase very high because of intellectual property rights. Fine. Also, in our country, there are a lot of local wisdom, lot of local creativity and innovations there. Right now, that knowledge can be simply taken away by the Europeans or the Westerners, and they can misuse this knowledge. They can almost modify this knowledge to claim that it is their knowledge. So, knowledge of our tribals, the wisdom of our, elderly, the traditional knowledge that we have inherited, right? For example, haldi, right? Use of curcumin in turmeric, or basmati, the issue related to basmati, right? And likewise, there are so many issues, right? We will talk about. So, intellectual property right. This is also a very important area, especially for engineers, right? Because we are, or engineers are mostly involved in what? Research, innovation, and development. Fine. So this, kindly keep in mind this important portion. Globalization and cultural ethics, obviously, today, whether you call it as a burger or bantiki, it doesn't matter, right? It has become synonymous today, right? You go to a marriage in village, you'll find people, ordering chow mein more or eating chow mein more compared to the traditional food. See, so this is an era where you are seeing a emergence of a monoculture, right? We are not able to distinguish between, we cannot make a distinction between westernization, right, and modernization, right? Also in globalization, transfer of people, transfer of technology, movement of people from one place to another, culture, food, aesthetics, many things exchange. Because of this, lot of other problems and conflicts emerge. This also brings a lot of issues, ethical issues, moral issues, especially for the third world countries like us. Fine. So we'll talk about, or that also is a very important area which you should keep in mind while you are preparing for the exam. Fine. Simple questions can be asked on this. Right? What is monoculturalism? How technology has impacted the values and culture in Indian society. Right? So certain kinds of specific questions can be asked using this. Right? Globalization and impact of, like you talk about COVID, pandemic, right? Globalization, it's a globalization disease basically, right? Because of the fast globalization, the disease can spread very easily, movement of people from one place to another, right? So how these things are changing the nature of lifestyle and the living of people, and somewhere the lives of people in developing countries like us, and what we can do about it. That is this portion. Fine. Emerging technologies, obviously, AI in Singapore. There was one of the first AI bureaucrat, AI civil servant, AI based official. Fine. He was used for sorting files and data. He died few months back. Right. So he fell off and he technically died. He was declared unfit. Now this is an example of one of the first AI bureaucrat, AI civil servant. Fine. Now, obviously, you can predict the future, what is going to happen. Elon Musk is already after that, right? So Grok, if you know about it, fine, Chat GPT, and obviously all these things. So artificial intelligence or virtual reality or sympathetic haptics is an old idea, but can be done very easily with AI. Fine. And many other areas are emerging, right? Because of the artificial intelligence, right? Or what you can say, the natural language processing, NLP, and likewise. So many of these technologies, how they are going to change the face of the human workforce, of the technical workforce. It is predicted that majority of the low skilled, semi skilled, or you can say the jobs that could be automated easily, most of these people will lose their jobs, right? So what impact it will have for society? What impact it will have for organizations if half of the engineers already we are unemployed, right? So what happens if technically, right, these, or if in reality these technologies take up these issues or these jobs that we have? Fine. So this area will deal with these things, right? Kindly keep that in mind. I'm not going into detail. This is more of our orientation session. Fine. Right. Obviously, how do you deal with all these? These are important topics which I've talked about. You develop a strong theoretical foundation. Obviously, you have to understand concepts, basic vocabulary, right? You can keep watching our channel. You can be tuned to this channel, and you'll get a lot of benefits. Analyze case studies. There are a lot of things happening around you, right? Like for example, when you say Bhopal gas tragedy, lot of things like that keep happening around you. You read newspapers, right? You watch a lot of things. Accidents, train accidents are quite common today. Delays in trains are quite common today, right? So you get a lot of important issues happening around you, right? Disasters are happening, and likewise. So kindly keep that in mind, fine? Or corruption cases and many other kinds of issues which you read in theory, right? Practically you see every day in the newspaper. Fine. If you want, obviously you can also listen to some of the news by uh, certain anchors, right? They will give you a very interesting case study. So a lot of case studies you see, kindly, I would not say all of them, but like what topics we have discussed related to them, kindly just look into some of them, right? Especially related to technical malfunction or sectors like railways, agriculture, disaster management, right? And transport sector. These kind of areas, right? Wherever you find some unique type of developments, some unique incidents, kindly note it down. They will be in the exam in some form or the other, right? Stay updated with current issues. Obviously, you'll be taught current affairs, right? Have good access to current affairs, fine. And obviously, you can at least get 10, 15 questions right. That is a very important strategy. And then how current affairs would be useful for 3, 4 questions. Obviously, without understanding ethical theory or principle, it cannot be done. But yes, if you're reading current affairs and ethical theories and principles properly, then you can say yes, 5, 6, 7 questions easily you can solve. Not just in this section, other sections as well. Non-tech part, right? Uh, Key strategies are very simple. Time management, you have to practice a lot of questions. Do a lot of questions, not just a lot of questions, a lot of quality questions, wide variety of questions. Engage in discussions. Definitely, this is not an area where you can simply mug up the concept. You cannot simply memorize the facts. You have to discuss. Certain things can only be understood by experiencing, observing, right? And also by discussing or engaging with others. Fine. Obviously, your mentors or teachers or friends, you can form a community, interact with them, right? So that your basic doubt, some undercurrents can be solved easily. Develop core understanding, right? Like I said, basic concepts are the key to doing anything, right? You deal with any subject, any area, without basic or core understanding, you may not be able to do it. So ultimately, this was a long session. I predicted, I thought of taking a smaller one, right? But yes, there are a lot of things which take, time. You need to understand these are the vital areas. If you focus on these areas with a good practice session, with continuous interaction and doubt clearing, definitely you can score very well in this part. In fact, you don't need more than this. If you are able to understand these heads properly, right, and able to understand the nature of syllabus under these heads, you can solve the questions very easily. Fine. Thank you so much. In case of any doubt, you can approach us. Kindly talk to the team, talk to our system, organization. You will get the details right? Anybody who has any doubt related to that, kindly call and let us know. Thank you so much for your time. All the best. See you again. Thank you.